All right, I move we come out of executive session.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we're in regular session. All right, we're going to move to agenda item 7, make a formal request to the Journal newspaper to ask Secretary of State to become a paper of record in Jefferson County. Okay, so during public comment, which I cannot interact with you all, I think there's some miscommunication as to what this really means. This is not trying to remove a paper of record in the county whatsoever. This is merely suggesting adding a paper of record to give the possibility to use that paper for certain notices as well. Nowhere in this am I suggesting we remove either paper of records in the county or remove advertising in those papers. This is just going forward giving the option, if it needed to be a paper of record, having the option to use the Journal, which is a daily publication, for any reason, but that was all this was. So I wish I could have said that probably at like 9 o'clock. But that's all this agenda item is. And I mean, I appreciate the spirit bringing the trade association rep from West Virginia, was it News Press Association. So I appreciate the rep coming and sitting through this, but unfortunately I couldn't say that during public comment. So that's what this was about. I have no intentions of removing a paper of record in the county whatsoever, or removing advertising from either of those papers. This just allows the commission or other electeds to use the Journal, which is a daily publication, which other counties have more than 1, 2, 3 papers of records.
The whole thing is, before proceeding, and even whether we want to initiate a contract with the Journal, is the Mother May I ruling from the Secretary of State. And for purposes of what we're doing today, that's as far as that goes. It may well be that when we talk to the Journal and try and negotiate, we're not going to come together and it dies, but it's no sense opening any kind of a discussion if the Secretary of State says, no, you got 2 papers in Jefferson County, keep it that way.
I guess, too, we have no control over paper of records. That's the Secretary of State and the newspaper specifically. We can't say, hey, Journal, you're a paper of record. That's their choice. They could say very well, we're not interested. So,
Yeah, and the thing, picking up on that, is it has to meet the legal requirement. Now, somebody mentioned to me earlier when we were standing in the hall, what about social media and whatever? If we post an announcement, which we routinely do, however, this is not all the legal death notices and all the everything like that, you know. I mean, in the commission, we tend to think of announcing special sessions, announcing vacancies for boards to be considered, and that kind of thing. If you go to the back of the Spirit, you'll see that there's a bazillion required legal notices. I was approached with, why can't you put it on the county website? And that's a whole nother issue, although the nature of modern society is such that people are moving more to electronic than they are print type of stuff. What Rod mentioned to me was if only we could get people to move onto our print site, you know, because the whole paper is printed, and furthermore, they don't have to go through the thing of having to do it on a weekly basis. So this discussion actually opens up a lot more contemplation. But today, it's Mother May I use the Journal as a paper of record.
I just have a question, and I guess, I mean, I don't really see the point, other than, you know, if you want to use them in addition to, you know, that I don't have a problem with that at all. But are you thinking about maybe for an election cycle using the Journal as opposed to the Spirit? Is that what this is?
This is not about replacing it at whatsoever. This is about giving us the, I understand we can advertise regardless if it's in the Spirit also. There are certain things we cannot, because it wouldn't be a paper of record. This is just opening the possibility, if need be for specific things, or if a future commission wanted to. I'm not saying remove any advertising from the Spirit or Shepherdstown Chronicle and transferring it to the Journal. It's just giving the commission or future commissions that third paper of record that does have a daily publication. If something were to come up, they wanted to print something that must be in a paper of record. That's it's in conjunction. This is all this is. And I'm sorry it's turned into some sort of political thing, as everything
Well, I
probably
mean,
does.
Can you blame me for asking
No,
the question?
no, and I'm telling you right now, that's not the case, and this is just as Kanawha County has 5 papers of record, Jefferson would just have 3, not 2. And one would be a daily publication, the other 2 are not. But I'm not saying let's remove all the advertising in the Spirit and transfer it to the Journal.
Are you considering removing anything from the Spirit?
No. If anything, I would like to keep the Spirit, and if there's something really important, adding it to the Journal also.
Well, that
That was
so
gonna be my
I
next
know
question.
We can't do that now. I
Only-
mean,
but for-
we can do both
Because-
now, can't we?
We're talking about meeting the legal requirement of
Okay.
advertising in a
about.
paper of record.
But you could still add it, you could still
You
add
could
it to the
add
journal.
it.
Yeah, so you're saying
Yeah.
if we put it in the paper of record, which is the Spirit, we also want to put it in the journal?
We can do that.
We
right?
can.
It
As
doesn't-
long as you prohibit us from
okay,
doing
Yeah,
it.
as
so
long
it
as it's in
doesn't-
the paper of record.
As long as it's in the paper of record, right. So I don't see the point.
Okay, so I mean, if that's the case, are you sure that's the case?
Yeah, I mean, we could put any legal ad, I mean, we could, it doesn't meet, so it wouldn't meet the legal notice requirements if we only put it in the journal. But if we placed an ad in this, if we placed a legal ad or legal notice in the Spirit and then added, and also put it in the journal, that doesn't.
I'm just, okay, so I'm just, for some, I don't know, I can't give an example right now. Say, for instance, you needed a paper of record and you want it to be a daily publication for some unbeknownst reason. What's the harm of just having a third paper of record that is a daily publication? I recognize where you can use that irrelevant if it's in the Spirit or Journal.
I think
But-
it makes it very confusing to the public. What day do they need to go to the Journal to find this one advertisement that's going to be in there to meet a deadline? People will think that's even, that you're trying to even hide something even more.
Okay, I'm not trying to hide anything, actually. I just, from a realistic standpoint, I don't know how you argue something that's printed 365 days a year versus
Well,
48.
I
Here's
understand
the
that.
thing, let's get back on point. All we're doing is asking the Secretary of State for a ruling whether we can or not. It may well be that if we negotiate with the Journal, it would still be cost prohibitive to do anything. But there's no sense even asking the question if we know that we don't have the authority.
We
to
don't
do
even
it.
have the authority to ask the Secretary of State. We're requesting, we're essentially, hey, Journal, are you interested? If so, why don't you ask the Secretary of State, is how this goes. We don't have any jurisdiction to say, Journal, make that request. The individual newspaper has to make the request. We could say that, hey, Journal, please be a paper of record, and they said, no, forget it, and it's over. I mean, that's all this
Think
is.
they're going to turn down that, you think they're going to turn down the speed?
So I do think, I'm not sure what I'm about to tell you, but oftentimes an advertisement, especially for elections, require, so there are class 1, class 2, class 3, and then there are class 1, class 2, class 3, O. And when it has an O by it, it means opposing views. I know that the Spirit is listed as affiliated as a Democratic paper. I think that the Journal, the last time I checked, had no party affiliation. I'm not sure if they were both papers of record, if when the requirement is a class O requirement, if we would actually have to publish in 2 of the newspapers if having no party affiliation would be considered the opposing view to the Democrat. So it could cause us in some instances to have to publish in both.
Okay, so to that point.
And I'm not, it could, I'm not
Yeah,
sure
so
on that
okay,
point.
To that point, I want to table this pending further information, because if that's the case, then we're not going to do that then, because I don't want to, that would cost us more money, and that's not cost prohibitive, so.
I could tell you, if the Spirit were considered a Democratic paper and the Journal said, yeah, we're Republican affiliated, absolutely you would have to advertise it.
Okay, so-
But because they're non-affiliated, I don't know if that is the case with a non-affiliated paper.
Okay, so I move we table this pending more information.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, let's move on. All right, so another Rockville-related item, which I'm sure everybody stayed here for. Okay, so initially I invited the president of JUI to attend, and I sent him roughly 5 questions prior to the meeting, and subsequently he declined my invitation, I guess yesterday. So there were copies on the back I don't know if anybody saw those or if they're already taken. I mean,
They're back there.
okay, so there are a few copies back there. If you guys want to take a second and just grab some. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm going to summarize it, a few points. I'll give everybody a second to just... As much as I want to read this, I know you guys can read this yourself, so I'll just touch on a few things. I can do it for you if you'd like, Commissioner
Well,
Nolan.
I was just thinking for the public that might be listening.
Okay, and this will be posted too. We're going to make sure it's posted on the website, the County Commission website, correct, Stephanie?
Yeah, it already is. It's
Okay, so
under-
it's currently
I
posted
placed it
too.
under Sandy placed it under Rockwell information, and it says JUI response to questions from commissioners.
Okay, so one thing that's not addressed in these things I'm going to touch on briefly is the Public Service Commission approved, I guess, the emergency water thing. That's a public document already on the PSC website. I don't know if you guys have already seen it or aware of it. I just want to make that known. And I'll just read the case number real quick if anybody wants to search it. Case number 18-0657-W-ECN. So that's where you'd find that on the PSC website. That explains the whole process, the emergency water thing for Rockwell. Okay, so the email right here, I guess JUI is just giving a brief synopsis of how they came to be in existence and some of the events that took place over the past few years. Let's jump to the bottom of the first page. The first question was explanation of how JUI came to provide water service to Rockwell versus not Charlestown utility. You can see the outlines, answers right here. I'm not going to read them all. It's a practical solution. They were obligated because it's, I guess, in their service area. That would have been one of my questions. How is that is that absolutely your service area? Is there some documentation or something you could provide us to show that's actually your service territory and Charlestown couldn't serve that area? That would be one of my questions. They note their large user rate is lower than Charlestown, I guess, as well as their capacity fee is non-existent versus Charlestown. And I'll try to get more clarification too on some of these. Unfortunately, no rep is here to ask these questions. So, number two, clarification of Rockwell water usage and how it would affect the county water table. I know that's been brought up quite a bit. I'll read this one. Jefferson Utilities has ample water source capacity to serve Rockwell as well as our growing residential water customer base. The USGS estimates the groundwater recharge rate for Jefferson County carbonate limestone aquifer to be 90.7 million gallons per day. So, I mean, I know it's been 500,000 or 125,000. If these are accurate numbers as far as water, I mean, that's far lower than even 500,000, 90.7 million. I don't know what amount is currently taken out from residentials on Charlestown, PSD, or JUI. That would be another question. Question three, explanation of how the water infrastructure for Rockwell is being paid and how it is being paid back. I would probably guess you guys have looked into this quite a bit on your end as far as a group. So it looks like the West Virginia Development Council or Infrastructure and Jobs Council is floating a 40-year bond at 1%, or a loan. And then JUI is kicking in roughly $330,000 for engineering, design, and permits and right-of-ways. This directly ties into question 4. What is the net effect of Rockwell infrastructure as it relates to the book value of JUI once it's entirely installed or paid for? To that note, it's a 40-year, it's amortized over 40 years, but what I hear is after that 40-year period, it's essentially forgiven as a grant or something along those lines is what I was told. I'm just saying what I've been told. It may be differencing of information. And JUI is saying their book value will only increase by the amount JUI invests. So that would be $330,000 according to this answer. From accounting terms, I want to know where the other assets are being reflected on the books. Maybe as a kayak or something like that. So that's another subsequent question I would have asked if we had a rep here. Here's a huge question a lot of people are concerned about that have voiced their stuff to commissioners. As far as forced hookups, if we're putting this line out there, I asked, does JUI have any long-term plans to move to forced water hookups of county residents on its water system? They said absolutely not. So, I mean, these are direct answers from JUI. So going forward, if there are any forced hookups, remember, they said absolutely not. So, I mean, it is what it is. These are the answers I asked, I would hope.
JCDA will own it, though.
They're going to be a leaseholder. They'll be the leaseholder, and I would see after 40 years that lease would be transferred to them. And from the standpoint of JUI, it's a windfall for their company as a private company. I mean, they're getting a load of assets and infrastructure through the state. Should that ever be sold as a company, it still is going to have that infrastructure. So this is a sweetheart deal for JUI. And I'll just be blunt. Once I saw them promoting it on Facebook is when I really started looking into this. It didn't make sense to see a private utility, regulated utility, promoting an industrial or commercial site. It just doesn't make sense. You don't see that happening at Potomac Edison or any of these other utilities. So that's initially struck me as bizarre. So we're technically not supposed to interact per se, but.
Point out that water table is 1976 is when they did that study. Is it, okay, all right.
So yeah, I don't know how the rest of the area is factored in. I mean, these would have been subsequent follow-up questions. How much currently is PSD, Charlestown, Ranson, Shepherdstown, Harvest Fair, how much are they pulling out daily? I don't have those things. I'll do follow-up questions, but just I wanted to get a start on the water stuff because I know that's been loud vocally from y'all's group. So I anticipate more information coming, hopefully. Does any commissioners have any comments on this? Okay, so I mean, that's all I really have for this. You guys have the stuff, the answers, and I'll try to get follow-up questions or more detail on certain these things. And I've got emails from some of you also that I was expecting to ask JUI, but unfortunately they're not here. So, other than that, that's all I have. I move we adjourn.
Second.
And just,
Hold it.
Just a brief update under my county administrator reports. 2 of you have already provided me. There is a survey that went out to county commissioners from the state fire marshal concerning Senate Bill 625. If you want to answer those on your own, you can, but we have that information. So I was planning on preparing one response on behalf of the commission, bringing it to you before I submit it to get your blessing.
That works.
And then submitting it to them, because we actually have staff members. I know many counties in West Virginia may not, but we actually have people on staff who can, yes, we do, who can provide these answers. So I will get my staff together, and I already told them yesterday that this would be forthcoming, and I would be asking them to gather this information, get my staff together, respond to the survey, and then let you look over it, because it is technically to you, but you don't have that information at your fingertips, and if you needed it, you would come to one of us and ask us. So if you feel free, if you want to send it in as an individual commissioner, you certainly can. Yeah. But I already have 2 of them, and we'll start working on them.
So do you need our paper copies or individual? Do you need our individual paper
I
copies?
do not. I do not.
Okay.
I am aware that around the state, they emailed them to the individual commissioners' homes, apparently, not to the staff for the commission, so.
all right, any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.